The goal for tonight is for families that are currently in distance learning to share some of their experiences, to hopefully provide everyone some confidence during this transition as they transition to distance learning. Tonight, we're going to be using a host of panelists. We have principals. We have a lot of topics that we're going to be discussing. We kind of broke it down into the themes based on the questions that the audience provided beforehand. We're going to be talking about what distance learning looks like in our house. We're going to be talking about learning environment. We're going to be talking about work and school balance. And we're going to be talking about socialization, engagement, and mental wellness. Before we get started, I want to thank the PTO and Zephyr Wellness for hosting this event with us. I'll be working as the moderator today and trying to get through and
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Liz.
Sorry, your audio cut out, so I wasn't sure if you were introducing me or not, but I am Liz Pelvier. I'm the current president of the Mahtomedi PTO. In a typical year, the PTO is in our schools providing a lot of enrichment programming. That's obviously different this year, and we've been trying to push content out to families to use at home. One tool that I think will be very helpful during distance learning is our family directory. If you're looking to connect your student with their classmates and friends, that is the only place you can access their contact information. And you can register for that at our website, which is mahtomedipto.com. And I just would like to say thank you for everyone for participating tonight.
And next we have Tony Pierce, who is the Director of Special Services, and he's going to be speaking on behalf of Zephyr Wellness.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Mahtomedi PTO and Zephyr Wellness program. I'm Tony Pierce. I'm the Director of Student Support Services here at Mahtomedi Schools. Our Zephyr Wellness program is to help students, staff, and community members learn, grow, and support each other on wellness issues. The Zephyr Wellness program includes a community conversation series, staff development to support student wellness, and co-located mental services in all of our school buildings. Our program scope is made possible because of the generosity of the Mahtomedi Area Educational Foundation, or MAPE. Families have shared with us their interest and opportunities to learn from fellow families, and we are excited to co-host tonight's elementary parent panel on distance learning. I want to encourage anyone who is looking for support to reach out to a contact in your school, be it your child's classroom teacher or any of our support staff, that's Pam McCabe and Dr. Carol Hulkinson at OH Anderson and Joe Pendelson at Wildwood, or any of your principals. After this event, we will share a survey about Zephyr Wellness programming, and we hope you'll share future event ideas with us. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And to start this conversation, I think it's going to be nice to have a baseline of some operational issues around distance learning 2.0. So I'm going to have Ms. Prather from OHA and Mr. Brisky from Wildwood. They have some slides to share with everyone.
All right, thumbs up, you can see my slides. We good? Okay, awesome. All right, so Susie and I are going to take a couple of minutes and go over some of the big picture stuff of our pivot to distance learning 2.0. You can find much more detail in our distance learning 2.0 guide. It has Wildwood's OH, the middle school and the high school, and you can access it here at mahtomedi.k12.mnus school year plan, or under the quick links in the website on all of our school building web pages. We've gotten into much more detail on this. One thing we wanted to make sure that we did was put all of the plans in one place. We know that there's a lot of communication that comes out from the districts, from the schools, from Susie and I, from the principals. And when we were talking about all that communication, we wanted to make sure that we got it into one place. So this is kind of a one-stop shop for all the information that that you would be needing for the pivot and what's going on with distance learning 2.0.
Thank you, Scott. I'm Susie Prather, the principal of OH Anderson, and this is what our framework is for distance learning 2.0. It's continuous learning every day, so 5 days a week of learning, online daily instruction with teachers based on a regular schedule. It'll have both face-to-face and recorded lessons for flexibility. And then that small group instruction is something that we have found really helps that feedback loop for students, especially at the elementary level, to get that individual attention, to see and do some corrective teaching if kids are off track, and make sure that we're appropriately challenging students. And then really opportunities for independent practice and that feedback. So you will see distance learning 2.0 looking different than you did last spring.
All right, the Wildwood classroom schedule. When we started to look at what we wanted distance learning 2.0 to look like, one thing that we wanted to ensure is that we kept our interventions going. We have 100+ students in interventions, which means that they get small group instruction in extra small group instruction in literacy, math, and English language. And so we also wanted to make sure that our distance learning schedules in the classroom are very closely related to our hybrid schedules, so that when students are pivoting, that they get that familiar feeling. And so what I'm going to go over right now is really the big pictures. We're still kind of in the detailed planning portion. Today and tomorrow we're going to be doing some more details, and you will get a detailed classroom schedule from your child's classroom teacher. So these are some of the common things that you'll see in those grade levels. So all of our grade levels will start with a morning meeting, and you'll see that in kindergarten, first and second grade. In second grade, they'll have a 60-minute math block or so, a 90-minute literacy block. They'll have read alouds in there. They'll have seesaw lessons. They'll have a combination of digital and paper activities. And then to end the day, they'll have a whole group read aloud and closing time. That's also common in first and kindergarten. We do have a common lunchtime at Wildwood, which is 11:30 to 12 o'clock, where all the grades are eating lunch at the same time. So if you have a kindergartner and a second grader, or a kindergartner and a first grader, they can take a break and eat lunch together. There will be no activities scheduled during that time.
And the OH Anderson schedule is the same schedule for everyone in grades 3, 4, and 5, and really to bring that consistency piece with that. So we'll start the day at 8 o'clock with that morning meeting, and during that morning meeting is when attendance is taken. They'll see daily announcements, so we'll do our little video shows with that, second step lessons, and then follow the morning meeting process, which is really a greeting, it is sharing, it is a game that they do together, and then news and announcements. We feel that that's an important part really to build that community and get to know our kids for that. At 8:30, the kids are going to stay right on their Google Meet and start with their literacy mini lesson, which is usually about a half an hour. And then after that, teachers will hang on to that Google Meet for kids that need individual or small group support on that assignment for literacy. Then there's a wellness break from 9:30 to 10 and snacks. Snacks are important at OH Anderson. We like to eat. And then from 10 to 10:30, so we would be off of a Google Meet. We'd pop back on at 10. So the two times to remember are 8 and 10. And that's when the math mini lesson is on. And then again, that teacher would stay on after to help individuals or small groups that need support with math. Then 11 to 12 is a lunch and wellness break. And then the afternoon is designated for small group work and independent work. So that's when the students will be doing any more literacy and math lessons that they need to do, science and social studies, their specialist lessons. And then that's when teachers will be having those small groups for literacy and math to really do that differentiation information and really to get that socialization happening with that as well. And I did write a note on there that interventions will be prioritized based on need and availability. As Scott said, you know, with a change in the schedule, we want to try to make sure we're supporting all of the kiddos, but scheduling is kind of a challenge, and they're working really diligently in these last couple of days at getting those interventions, both for reading and math and social emotional needs, and as well as special ed and EL. So you'll be contacted individually of those times with that.
All right, so specialist schedule. Every student will have one specialist activity a day. And so if you look below, let's just take kindergarten, for example. On Monday, they would have STEM. On Tuesday, they would have art. Wednesday, they would have PE, and so on and so forth. All the specialist activities will be shared and posted at 7 a.m. and they can be slotted in anytime during the classroom schedule. Some classroom schedules, again, you'll get a more detailed schedule from your classroom teacher. They will schedule them in. Other ones will give some time where you can do those specialist activities. The specialists will be checking and responding to all of the activities each week. And our specialists will have an open Google Meet from 12 to 12:30. We really felt like it was important to connect with the specialists, especially if you had questions about the assignment or the activity or whatever you're working on, or if students wanted to share their work or just to pop in and say hi. The Google Meet codes for those specialist open Google Meet times are listed below.
Thank you, Scott. And our specialist schedule are going to look a little bit different. We typically had Mondays media, Tuesday Phy Ed, Wednesday art, Thursday music, and Friday Spanish. But our specialists have decided to do specialist live lessons. They've really seen that be beneficial for kids, and they're going to be doing little teasers. So they might be singing a song, talking about the lesson, and then that is the lesson that the student would do during that day. We do have all the lessons not due till Friday. So if they don't have time on a certain day, they can catch up with that. There will be Google Meets for Q&A. So if kids have questions and answers, I know Mr. Pontius had said a lot of times in the Google Meets, kids will come and share the music that they created to kind of have a live audience with that. But they'll be scheduled 15-minute special live teasers each day in the afternoon for kids as well. We're looking this first week as specialist catch up, and then starting with those new lessons on the 7th at OH Anderson.
All right, attendance is super important. We will be starting our morning meetings. Most classes will be starting their morning meetings unless they have that intervention time at 8:10. But between 8:10 and 9:30 each morning, we'll have a morning meeting, and that's where we will take attendance. So it's really important to show up for those morning meetings for multiple reasons: to get the schedule for the day, to be able to connect with other students and the teacher, and then also that's where we'll be taking attendance. So if you are going to be absent, just like if we were in person, you would call the attendance line, and Katie Langer will take that. And if you're going on vacation or if you are sick, you just call and we'll put an absence in just like we would do if you were here at school.
And as you can see the pattern here, OHA is very similar. Our morning meeting is when attendance will be taken from 8 to 8:30. We realize that some people might be doing their lessons using the videos later. So there will be calls that go out at 10 a.m. if kids are absent, so you know. But if kids are using that flexible time looking at the recorded lessons, we'll correct those absences in the system. So teachers will let Chris know in the office. And again, we let that attendance line know if people are going to be absent as well. So that is that same number that Scott spoke of, but it's OH Anderson's number.
Yeah, and there is some flexibility in attendance too. We know that each family situation is a little bit different. So if you have to run students, your children somewhere, and you're going to miss some of the morning meeting or whatever, just let the classroom teacher know that, and we can make a plan for that. We know that everybody's kind of in a unique situation when we pivot to distance learning. Okay, so in this chart, you'll see there's the teacher's job, there's the learner's job, and there's the family's job. And we both, Susie and I, recognize that it really is a partnership, and it's even more of a partnership when we're in distance learning. We need parents to partner with our teachers, and teachers need parents to work together so that we can do what's best for your students. We will create a schedule for what needs to be completed each day. We've been doing for the last couple of weeks, all of our grade levels have been modeling Google Classrooms. We've inserted all of the codes and the passwords, and everything should be ready to go on the iPads. We trained all the paraprofessionals to help with Tier 1, so we know that will continue the learning. And our teachers will plan daily morning routines with students, we'll take attendance, and we'll check in daily. As a learner, they want to make sure that they have create a quiet learning space that's conducive to learning. That's really important. Headphones are awesome to kind of block out some of that noise and make sure that they're focused. And create routines and follow them. And then follow that schedule that you get from the classroom teacher. I think as far as a family, again, creating that learning space and making sure that you do get onto the Google Meets. That's where there's a lot of connection that happens, and that is where the teacher will be going over the schedule for the day. And so if there's questions, you can ask at that time. I know that in our household, we create a schedule for our kids, and we really make sure that we are intentional about getting on those Google Meets, taking breaks when it's break time, make sure we're doing the specialist activities, and we post it so they can see it. And we know that that's really important, making sure that you have a schedule. And then I would say if there's anything that is not working or is proving to be difficult, make sure that you communicate with the classroom teacher. We're flexible, and we know that flexibility has to be part of the game here, and we are willing to work with you to make sure that we can get something that works out for everybody.
Thank you, Scott. And ours looks very similar. We really talked to outline what are the learners' jobs. We want to have student and learner agency in this. And one of the things we found is the students really are owning their learning and organizing themselves and things like that. But really, the common question that I hear families ask is, what do I need to do? And I hear that from my neighbors around here as well. I think, again, like Scott said, I can't say enough about what is that quiet learning space that you can have in your house where there's not distractions. I know I used to work behind the pantry, and you don't do that with teenage boys because they're in that pantry a lot, but thinking about a quiet place because it does pick up sound. As Scott said, if you could help them set up alarms, and I know teachers have showed that on their Chromebooks, and just having those alarms go off 2 minutes early so they're ready for the Google Meets if they're going to be doing them synchronously. I think sometimes just kind of checking before those Google Meets, and I have information that I sent on really on Wi-Fi and sound to make sure that works and what are tips to do with that. And then I often ask, parents often ask, do I need to check their work? You do not need to check their work. What you want to do is ask how it's going. You may want to do some quick checks in Google Classroom, like just say, why don't you show me what work you still have left on your to-do area, but you don't need to do any of the work. The feedback is going to come from the teacher. If kids aren't doing the work, they'll let you know, but just asking them, what are you learning? Kind of being involved with that. And then I think checking in if there are struggles to let the teacher know right away so that we can help with those struggles, pull them in a small group to really support them with that as well. We are a team, and as Scott said, it really is a partnership in learning. So we want to be there for you with any questions that you have.
Susie, we are way over our time.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I think we are. I feel like we are. I don't know.
We'll mute ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie and Scott. I'm going to pivot now to talking with some families that have been distance learning this fall already, so they can share with you, get some insights that they might have learned, some challenges they face, and hopefully you can take what you can from it. I view this further discussion from here as kind of like a ECFE parent breakout room where we can all kind of learn from each other. So I'm going to have the panel introduce themselves. I want them to introduce who they are, their children's grades, and if they can give just a quick what their best tip or advice they have for families as they move and pivot to distance learning, as well as maybe a challenge that they faced. So if Sybil can start us off.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sybil Hill. I have two girls, a fifth grader and a first grader. The best tip I would have for you all would be to have, like Mrs. Prather and Mr. Brisky were saying, is a dedicated workspace for your child. However way you can manage it. I know not everybody has extra space at home, but if you can just block off that little area for your child, and it has all their tools, papers, pencils, crayons, whatever. One thing that I've found most challenging over this distance learning time is keeping my first grader on task.
Thank you, Sybil. If we can go to Elizabeth Lambert, please.
I'm Elizabeth Lampert. I have a sophomore and a fifth grader. I also agree with the principals. I think the most important thing to this is that we set good workspaces for our kids and that we stay on task. And I would say that the hardest part for me has been creating a schedule and sticking to it so that you have that no matter what day of the week is, you stick to the same schedule.
Thank you. Sam?
Hi, my name is Sam Baldoff. I have 4 kids. I have 2 high schoolers, a middle schooler, and a fifth grader that goes to OH Anderson. I think one of the biggest challenge for me is keeping all 4 kids organized. And that has been a challenge, but we've been doing distance learning since the beginning of the year for our OH Anderson fifth grader. And over time, it's worked out where I've created my own schedule and just like a lot of parents just stick to that schedule. And I think that's been helping us a lot the last 3 months.
Thank you, Sam. David?
Hi, I'm Dave Barkwell. I have 4 children, a 10th grader, 8th grader, and 2 fifth graders. And I guess from our perspective, you know, the Google Classroom. So Ms. Prather talked about Google Classroom. You can go in, you can review your children's work, and you can see whether they're handing their stuff in or not. And our older daughters love to go into the fifth graders' classrooms and let them know that they're slacking and that they have not done their assignment or they have not put their assignment up into the classroom properly or whatever. So it's great having older children to help with that, but also you as a parent, I think it's critical that you understand the Google Classroom, how it can be utilized to your advantage to help you with your kids' activities and work. And the other part is you know, the difficulties we've had is, so Zach requires speech. It's at 9:30 on Tuesday morning. It happens once a week. If I'm gone somewhere and doing something, he misses it. And I get a text from the specialist, and it's not a good text to get every week that you miss. And so there are just times that things don't happen the way you want them to happen. And so understand there are going to be some failures every now and then, whether it's, you know, when they talk about the partnership, whether it's the school, the teacher, yourself, or your child, there's going to be something that's going to take place. And you just have to roll with it and just not get too upset.
Thank you, Dave. Bridget?
Hi, I'm Bridget Brunner, and I have a senior and a sophomore and then a fifth grader at OH Anderson. And my best kind of tip would be, don't underestimate what your student is capable of doing independently. Because, you know, Margot, our daughter, has just really figured out a lot about technology and really grown as a learner in that way. I would say our biggest challenge is just trying to balance the amount of time on technology and doing that, because she uses it both to stay socially connected as well as for learning. So that balance of how much to allow her to do, that would be probably our biggest challenge.
Thank you, Bridget. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Smith. We have a first grader and a kindergartner, and we've been doing distance learning. One of my biggest tips is we set iPad alarms on their school issued iPad, and the kids have such a blast picking out the ringtone for that. And that keeps them on their Google Meets, because they know as soon as that happens, they go into Seesaw and they click on the link. And our biggest challenge too has also been keeping our first grader focused. So.
Thank you, Lisa. Ranel?
Hi, everyone. I'm Renelle Tennyson. I have a 3rd grader and a 5th grader at OH Anderson. I would say my biggest tip, and kind of to piggyback what David said, was just to be patient. It's not going to be perfect every day. And so that would probably be my biggest takeaway. And also just to stay in communication with your child's teacher. I know it's a lot of communication, a lot of emails, but that seems to be the best way. If you miss something, or if you need to be a little bit more flexible, just to keep in contact with your child's teacher. Another thing that I would like to add is the Google Classroom. I have downloaded on my phone. And so it's easy for me to kind of check throughout the day what things they still need to get done. And I can kind of say, hey, you need to finish up with music, or with Spanish, or whatever it is. I can kind of see what's in my kids' cues. So that's also helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Renelle. Heather?
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Taylor. I have a 3rd grader, a 6th grader, and a 7th grader. And I would echo what Renelle and David said about being active on Google Classroom, getting comfortable with that. Google Classroom can even send you weekly or even daily summaries if you need to. We do that more for our 6th and 7th grader than our 3rd grader, but frequent check-ins with her and with her teachers have been helpful. I would say that is our biggest challenge as well, is kind of being the person or being part of the team that's responsible for that constant check-in and making sure that everybody's staying on task.
Thank you, Heather. Kai?
Hi, I'm Kai Smith. I have a kindergartner and a 2nd grader, and I would say the biggest piece of advice or thing I've had to adapt to is keeping a regular schedule of times that kind of effort is going to go into the day, but having the knowledge that the amount of work that goes into that time where you're working, the output is going to change daily depending on the kids. Thank
you, Kai. And we also have a distance learning teacher with us tonight, Audra Haveman, the kindergarten distance learning teacher. Do you have anything to share?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I also have kids at home, a college-age student and a high schooler and a middle schooler. And I have the pleasure of teaching all these little kindies. And a couple of things for you to know is that it does vary from day to day, the energy level of the children, and you're seeing that firsthand. And the other thing to know too is that one way for you to help yourselves kind of know what's going on is that there's a family Seesaw app. And if you haven't already gotten onto that with your child's teacher, to make sure that you download the family Seesaw app, because that will allow you to see your child's completed work. Not that we expect you to check their work. That is the job of and role of the teacher, to check and provide feedback when and how it's needed. But it is a good thing to keep a handle on how your child's coming along, and if you have anything that you can see might be something to communicate with your child's teacher about.
Thank you, Audra. And before we move on, I'd like to ask all the audience members viewing this right now, if they could go into the chat and one word, if you can describe how you're feeling about this pivot to distance learning right now, just what you're feeling, and please share that in the chat, because I'm just kind of interested to see where everyone is right now. The first topic we're going to go into is, I think parents are having a hard time visualizing what distance learning 2.0 looks like. And so we're going to have Wildwood and OH parents share kind of what their typical day is. So Kai, if you could just walk us through, what does distance learning look like for your family? What's a typical day for you?
Yeah, so my kids have always been early risers. So I have about 2 hours of hanging out with them from about 6 to 8 in the morning, either doing breakfast and trying to force them to get dressed and brush their teeth. I'll reiterate, I have a kindergartner and a 2nd grader, just for reference. And so around 8 o'clock is when my 2nd grader, Gus, usually has his first meeting. And so I will get him kind of logged on and up and running. And then so he's kind of engaged then going forward for a bit. And then so his so I'll go through the second grader's day because he runs more autonomously than my kindergartner. And so that morning meeting lasts anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. And then what has worked, or the class is kind of settled on, is that there's a list of tasks, and sometimes there's pre-recorded math or phonics type of activities, some reading. And my son has gotten very good at working through them. I know Principal Brisky said, that there's 60-minute blocks for math or 90 minutes for reading. And I'm sorry if I'm getting those numbers wrong, but I think some kids will get through them very quickly. My son will get through his math assignment sometimes in like 15 minutes if it's just a pre-recorded video, and then he flies through the stuff. And sometimes I think I need to like catch him and try to see if he's really doing it, but he is really doing it. He seems to be engaged fairly well. He's just getting through it fast. And so he can wrap his stuff up in not that much time. My kindergartner at 8 o'clock, when my second grader gets on his morning meeting, has a few activities that Mrs. Haveman has kind of set up for him. And I will typically help him with those. I will say the biggest challenge of having a kindergartner is they don't have the reading skills to do Seesaw by themselves at all. So I am very engaged with a lot of the kindergarten activities and helping my son do them. And then I will get that in kindergarten. So far there is finding there's about 3 meetings that Mrs. Heyman is running, and getting him onto those every time is I have to set Google alerts to remind myself to get on. But he's very excited. He's very engaged. The amount of progress that has been made is really astounding. But it does require a lot of engagement for kindergartners.
Thank you, Kai. Sam, can you walk us through what your OH Anderson students' typical distance learning day might look like for families?
Okay, well, so I have 4 kids, and I feel that I'm always helping the high schoolers more than my elementary student, But Joshua is in Mrs. Anderson's class in 5th grade, and she's done a really great job of.
No, you've had.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you, Sam. Could you start again?
Okay, so my 5th grader, Joshua, is in Mrs. Anderson's class, and she's done a great job of just sort of pulling him, just guiding him through the whole process since September. And at the very beginning, I was emailing her, almost every day, and she'd always email back. And we're at a point where Joshua's doing a lot of his own work, instead of me having to walk him through, hold his hand and say, this needs to be done and stuff. And sometimes it's just for our family, because everybody has such different schedules, that I printed out like the schedule right here for Josh, and it's right there in front of him, instead of him trying to go online, trying to find what's going on. And so his day, he's the first one to start school. So he starts school, and just like Kai, he's able to finish his math, his literacy, in about between 15 and half an hour, and then so I pretty much written down his whole entire day was supposed to be like, and my goal for my day, for some reason, for our family is, since we have 4 different schedules, I need to have lunch ready for the earliest student. So I have to have lunch ready by 10:40. That's when my high schooler was eating lunch. So that's what I've been doing is making sure that everything is prepared for them so they don't have to be potentially being late for their next class, you know. And usually Joshua gets his stuff done pretty quickly, and he seemed very comfortable with it. Not at first, but after about 2.5 months now, he's been telling me how much he enjoys it. And I think it's because of the open communication I have with Mrs. Anderson, and if he was falling behind or something, I would usually get an email from her, you know, or I would Google Classroom, and there's a lot of accountability that I think has really helped him to be successful this year.
Thank you, Sam. And I'm going to ask Rendell to talk a little bit about working in a flexible schedule, because I know you've had some experience in some of your travels you've taken this year to work outside of the normal schedule, and how have you made that work for your family?
Thanks, Tony. We have been just giving ourselves a lot of grace. So a lot of times our schoolwork's not getting done the exact due date that it says it's due. So sometimes it's not done until Sunday night, and that's okay. So our teachers have been super awesome and flexible. And again, like I said earlier, I think just communicating to your teachers what your schedule is, because as everyone knows, this year has been just crazy. And the teachers and principals, they realize that not everybody's going to be on the same schedule with parents working or traveling or whatever it is. So I think sometimes my kids are doing work at 9 o'clock at night. They might be doing their math lesson. And as long as we do try to get everything done the day that it's due. And if we don't, then we know that we're going to push some things maybe to the weekend. And you know, when we had this long break this week, we were like, hey, we're going to have some days off. It's okay to do some of the work then. So I think spreading out some of the work is okay to do. And also just taking advantage, like if they have to read 20 minutes, my kids do that sometimes in the car or during dinner or whenever we can fit it in. So I think that would be my biggest tip about working with the flexibility. And then if your kids aren't able to check in at the morning meeting, just, you know, so they're not marked absent, just let your teacher know ahead of time what's going on. This year has been so much more manageable because of the live Google Meets. So I think everybody that's now pivoting to the distance learning 2.0 will be pleasantly surprised that your child will have some direct communication with their teacher.
Thank you, Renelle.
Sure thing.
We're going to be going on to the next thing that there was a lot of questions about, and there's kind of a major theme you're hearing from a lot of families is about the learning environment that we set up for our students and the routines that we set up. And I think you're going to find, I know I found it personally, the first week's hard, the next week gets easier, and over time it just gets better and better as you set up these routines and the environment for our students. And we'll have David go ahead and talk about his OH Anderson students and what are some of the things you found to be successful in helping your kids stay organized and focused on learning?
So can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you, David.
Okay, because you glitched on my end. Apparently that's the term that the twins use anyway. So I think that the main thing for us, you know, and we have been at this for a long time, is having everything they would have in a classroom in the room that they're in. So ensuring that they have their pencils, their pens, their papers, their documents, everything, their books, we have a printer in that room. We're fortunate enough to have a printer there for them. They don't need to leave the room. I think that I'm finding, you know, whether it's mealtime or other things, like our kids are lacking focus because everything kind of blends into everything else, right? So they're sitting down at dinner and then they start walking around talking about, you're just like, no, sit down, right? So it's the same thing. Try and create that environment for them to be organized, to be self-sufficient, to have everything at their disposal so that they don't need to leave, you know, continuing to not have bathroom breaks whenever they feel like it. You know, this is school, you're still in school and you don't want to miss any of that you had going on. You know, the other part of it is that organization too of your day, making your day the same. If your kids used to go and breakfast and then brush their teeth and have a shower before they go to OH Anderson, well, my kids still do that today, right? So their lives are similar in that they have a schedule. They know what their schedule is, other than Zach missing his speech every week. But they know their schedule and they know what they have at each time. And the other thing that our kids do that's kind of different than the lady who was just before me is that we use the time right after lunch, the group time, for homework, because then I know that they're doing their homework. They have a specific time every day to go in and get that work done, so that it's not them watching Netflix or doing whatever the heck it is they're going to do on their phones at that time in the office or in their work area. It is their time to get their homework done. You know, the other difficult part about that is that they know when they're done their homework that they're going to go play ping pong, or they're going to go walk the dogs or whatever. And so they do it quickly, right? And so one of the concerns that you have in this is that, are they doing their work thoroughly enough? And so, you know, kind of my deal with them is they have to put a proper effort in. So it's not just getting the work done, but it's getting the work done well.
Thank you, David. I think you make some excellent points there that I think a lot of us can relate to. Lisa, can you answer the same question? What have you done? I know you have much younger students, to keep organized and learning.
Yes, it is definitely different with, I would say, a kindergartner and a first grader. One thing is, I do agree, I echo that it's important to have a dedicated learning space. However, I would say that that space, whether it's a table, we, for instance, just put a table up in our dining room against the corner, and that has all the kids' school stuff. But for my kindergartner, that is not where she does her work. What I do is I have this bin, which was provided by the school, but you can get them anywhere. And it's got everything that she's got that she needs for the day, her binder, her whiteboard, everything, her math book. And we take that to the kitchen counter so I can work with her as I go about and do my things that I need to do during the day. Sometimes I'm next to her on my laptop getting things done, but she and I are in concert together, and having a mobile workstation works really well for us. And especially with the kindergartner, I think that having her do her meetings at the dining table, but then her art at the kitchen counter and her gym in this other room, it helps her to kind of move around a little bit more and stay focused on the task at hand. Our first grader does sit down at one table all day. So the biggest thing for that would be, I have to be able to check in, so it can't be too far away because my first grader is only 7, but what we do is we have headphones for both kids during their Google Meets to create some silence, because each other, you know, they make a lot of noise just doing their own Google Meets. And so that kind of helps create that quiet learning environment, even though they need to be closer in proximity to one another. The other thing is that I like to be able to put everything away at the end of the day, meaning the iPads as well. So they are not necessarily staying in the student's workstation. I put those up on a shelf so that we're just not tempted to go on there all the time. And yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, headphones are really good, as I mentioned, to create that space. One other thing I would say is this is just, as far as distractions go, if you need to tape over their little box where they can see themselves, that is something that I've found creates more of a distraction-free learning environment for themselves. Because I know that my 5-year-old really likes to make faces in that camera during class meets. So that is something that helps us.
Thank you, Lisa. And I'm going to ask Audra now, because I know kindergarten teachers spend a lot of time creating learning environments. That's a big thing that they do if you ever looked into a kindergartner's classroom. So from the other side of the screen, is there any insights you can provide families as they're working to create their own distance learning environment?
Well, sure, Tony. The 2 parents that just spoke actually are parents that I have had this year, and I see their kids working very differently, but both so productive and making such amazing progress. So the first thing I want y'all to know is that partnership with the parent and the child is the key. And whether you're a parent who's working or a parent who's home, I think you just need to make it work for you. So whether it's a set space or a mobile space, again, you're the one who knows your child best. But like Lisa said, having something that contains all of the supplies that they will be needing for the day, so that they can independently pull it out themselves, is going to make a world of difference. as a teacher, when we are starting our Google Meets, sometimes our Google Meets are very interactive and they've got a whiteboard and they've got things that they're doing during the Google Meet that they need. And we do that check-in right away at the beginning. But the majority of students have those things ready to go, so we can just launch right into what it is that we're working on. So if initially you as parents can be sure that your children have the supplies and materials easily accessible, and on the flip of that, at the end of your day, teach them how you want them to put them away. Because if you were in the classroom, that's exactly what we'd be doing. We'd be practicing. How do you take your stuff out, do it without dropping it, and doing it with a quietness, and then, okay, how do you put it away when we're all done? No, actually, you need to put the crayons back into the box. Well, actually, that's right, but you have to make sure the cap clicks on the marker, or they're not going to work tomorrow. So it's establishing those routines that you probably have given very little thought to when you are a parent at home, when you don't have to also be in charge of school. So those routines are important. But like Ranel said too, some families have a much more flexible need for their schedule. And the thing that I'm seeing just today with my kindergarten team is that there is a very set schedule because your kids have already been in a schedule for the school year up until this point. And so within that schedule, I guess the concern is don't freak out if it doesn't exactly fit you. Talk with us and just let us know what you need, because we are all figuring this out, and we need to work with you so that we can count on you to work with us, because that's what's best for our kids. It's been really fun. Believe it or not, it's been really fun.
Thank you, Audra. I think it's always nice to have a teacher's perspective for parents to think about too. Moving on, I know there's some questions that are coming up in the chat, but we have a lot of working families out there, and we're going to try to talk about that work-school balance, because I know it's a challenge for a lot of families. And Elizabeth, can you give any insights or tips you have for parents to manage both work and distance learning?
I was just saying in the chat, I think that, again, I can mirror what others are saying. First week is tough. You get going, it gets easier. I promise it really, truly does. I train horses for a living, so I'm not working from my office necessarily, but I am in my barn. I am busy usually from about 8:30 until probably about 8:30 at night. I would add to everybody's comments that bedtime is still important, because we're not still on summer vacation, although sometimes it feels that way. So don't forget that. But I really just think that once you create that schedule and you find sort of that new balance, it does make better sense. My girls have a set place in my office where they work every day. They sit down, they each have a desk. They do their schoolwork there. They do their Google Meets there. My fifth grader will come out every once in a while if I'm teaching or we're working a horse and say, I have a question, I can't figure this out. And I'm able to sneak away for 5 minutes, answer questions or do whatever, or I tell her that we need to do it at the end of the school day. So I think you find a way somehow, just as you give yourself the grace that Ranel is saying, give yourself the time that others are saying, and give yourself a chance to sort of get in a groove, and it does work.
Thank you. Bridget, do you have some insights that you could give us as a working parent?
Yeah, hi. Both my husband and I work full time, and we shift back and forth. Sometimes one of us is home, and then sometimes one of her brothers who are older are the boss. So I think that's one of the things, is just having our fifth grade daughter know who her person is for the day, that she can communicate with and ask for help. She certainly prefers her parents to the teenage brothers, but they do their job when they need to. You know, one of the things that I think is really important is that we have seen is really just pushing her to be as independent as she possibly can, and doing that early on. Having her understand that, you know, technology isn't just used for entertainment, because up to this point, that's mostly what she's used it for, and start to really gain the understanding that technology can be used to learn and also to solve problems. So if there's something that she's wondering about or she's not quite sure, that, you know, there's some power in Googling it for kids who are definitely in that, you know, 3 through 5 age range. I'm sure, you know, kindergartners and first graders aren't going to be able to do that, but she can. You know, definitely making sure that she has those basic school supplies, timers, those things at her disposal. Pre-making lunches so she knows what's available to her and that she can just get it out of the fridge, much like she would take her lunch with her to school. I would say finding ways to communicate that work for you as well, that's been successful for us. So she's able to communicate with both her dad and I using the technology piece, either with Google Hangouts or texting. She also has mastered the use of the Post-it note. So she's able to, when we're working, just come and lay a Post-it alongside of us, and then we know that we need to get to her when we can. And I think, you know, the biggest thing more than anything, as some people have said already, is mostly just me reminding myself as I'm in my workday that if I get the Post-it or I get the message from her, nothing is an emergency. She's doing 5th grade. She's going to be okay. She's going to get through that moment, just like she would at school if something wasn't going perfectly and seamlessly. And then we'll figure it out and work it out and problem solve together when we have a free moment to be able to do that. So the work-life balance can be tricky when you're all at home, but it does work once you start to get into a groove.
Thank you, Bridget. I just got a reminder. So when you're using the chat, make sure you use the drop-down link to put it to everyone. Otherwise, it's just going out to select groups. I did not know Zoom was so specific in their chat features, but just a tip for everyone out there. I wasn't able to find a panelist with some of the younger learners that were also working, but I'm sure through communication, this is the start of the conversation. We will be finding some, and it is working. So hopefully we can keep finding more input for you. I know it's going to be a bigger challenge as the student gets younger and younger. And I do have something to share from a panelist that wasn't able to make it tonight, but they did email, and I'd like to share her thoughts as a single working parent outside of the house. The 3 main things she would tell all working parents. The first one is the child's engagement time in the class is critical. If you cannot be present in the same room for this time of day, trying to find someone who can. Now is the time to engage and help others in your bubble, making sure your child gets to the meetings when they're supposed to be there, and actually succeed. And the third tip was, as a working parent, they're always looking for opportunities to spend quality time with their kids. On how to balance those things. I know it's going to be a challenge for everyone, but give yourself grace. It's going to get better, and you will get through it. So keep those communication lines open. And then I'd like to move on to the last theme that we saw in a lot of questions from families, was talking about student socialization needs, emotional social development, engagement, and some mental wellness type topics. And I'm going to ask Sybil to join in because I know she's been doing a lot of work with some of the school families and some volunteer roles. But
Hi, everyone. Sorry, Tony, your audio is out. Good to go? I have again, I have a 5th grader and a 1st grader. And I'd like to kind of break down my tips kind of as tips for like your home life on keeping your children engaged socially. You know, they are going to be missing that daily friend interaction. And then also tips for school and extracurricular activities. So my tips for home, and I guess this is kind of an overall thing, is it's great to use positive reinforcement for your kids when you see them doing things that you like. For example, with schoolwork, if you see them struggling, but then they really power through it, just really giving them those kudos and saying, I could see how that was so challenging, but you stuck with it and you got through it. So, that's really great. And on the home side, if you see the siblings playing really nice together, call them out and tell them that they're doing a great job getting along. We all are in this together, and it's all hands on deck, really. So, so tips for home, my first grader and my fifth grader play together a lot. So enlist the siblings to help each other out and really be those playmates that they're lacking from their school time. If you are a working parent, if you're able to sneak away 5-10 minutes, periodically throughout the day, just to play quick games or just read like a short picture book or a chapter in a bigger book for your older child. We also use Kid Messenger a lot for our girls to keep in touch with their friends just outside of school. And they also are playing video games with their friends online, and that's just been really fun, and they really enjoy doing that. Some tips for having your children stay socially connected with regards to school and extracurricular activities are, I would definitely ask the homeroom teacher if they have any opportunities for outside of the classroom time socialization. So for Mrs. Brown, my first graders teacher, she opens the last meeting of the day about 15 minutes early just for the kids to get together and talk and show off things, do a little show and tell. And Mrs. Anderson has 2 days a week where she does one day is a science experiment day, and then another day is just a kind of a moderated social time with just various topics, and kids can get together and talk, and then they can kind of be silly, but it's also really fun. And my daughters have been doing both of those things and really enjoying it. I think Mrs. Prather touched on the specialist teachers at OH Anderson. They do have office hours. My fifth grader is telling me, but that might have changed now, I'm not sure, but that's typically just a smaller group or even just one-on-one with the teacher. And that's just, really great for the kids to get that reinforcement, that positive reinforcement, and show off what they've been working on, and ask questions also. Couple other things. Both of my girls have been active with Girl Scouts this whole time, and I've been leading both of their troops virtually. We have for each troop 2 meetings a month, and it's just a really fun time. Again, a smaller group, and they can talk and be silly, and also just do various crafts and activities together. And I think somebody also had mentioned having like a lunch bunch. Maybe it was in the chat. A lunch bunch has been a really great tool to use both the technology and then also just kind of incorporating it into your social time and social schedule. And that's all I have for socialization, but I would be happy to help anybody offline as well if you need any sounding board to bounce ideas off.
Thank you, Sybil. Is my audio working? Can someone?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just going to keep to the audio, so hopefully it comes through. Heather, do you have some insights to share on how you guys are managing some of the social and engagement issues that families might have been expressing concerns about?
Sure. And I've loved seeing all the things in the chat here. I thought it's been very helpful. Like you had mentioned, Sybil, about the lunch buddy. I loved the study buddy idea. I would say that has been our answer to the social questions have been to just get really creative. I have 3 active girls, and left to their own devices, however sweet they are, they're also fairly energetic. And so it has been an interesting challenge to find ways to direct that. And I would say during school, directing it to what they are doing at the time that they're doing it, and making sure that, yep, whether they're plugged in with headphones or that kind of thing. And then there's always social time. And so I've checked in with them more often about how are you doing? Have you talked to your friends? Who are you, seeing online? Have you had a chance to chat with X, Y, or Z person? And so really taking it upon myself to be the person who's engaged and making sure that they are thinking about that social part too, which has been good I think for all of us. We talk a lot more. I hadn't really expected to be kind of on call for the social aspect. So again, to their energy level, if I'm not directing something when they're not doing school, then all of a sudden we potentially have some chaos. And so either pre-planned activities or, like you say, playing games, something that has been thought out. Or we've kept them in many of their piano, dance, that kind of thing, and have done that online, and that has been successful. It's not as much fun for them, but they get it. And again, we're talking about why it's important and what's happened and how to make that successful. And then our trampoline and our bicycles have been our biggest saving grace. Get outside, go get some energy off of you, be very deliberate about making sure that each part of the day they have some sort of outlet for all of that extra energy.
Thank you, Heather. There's a lot of themes that are going on, and I do want to mention that I've personally been doing a weekly science meetup with the 5th grade distance learners, and there's going to be opportunities for families and parents that are capable to potentially volunteer in the distance learning classroom. So I ask all the parents that are looking for some of those opportunities to contact the teachers. Have patience. It might take a while for them to get set up and ready, but there will be opportunities for you to lead maybe some extra little activities. I know Sybil's been very active leading some social time for students just to get together. And the other big thing that I think most of the distance learning families would agree with is from the start of the year till now, Google Meets have actually upped their game a little bit, and they've added this feature called the breakout rooms, and teachers have been using that a lot. And my students seem to love it, just to be able to break into a small little group to do a task. Sometimes it's reading a story, or it's sharing something you wrote, sharing the artwork you made. It could be any little different thing. And then the whole class gets pulled back together a few minutes later. And that feature, I think, is a great feature to keep kids engaged, as well as give them the time to connect with their classmates as they would in a normal classroom. We have a few minutes before we finish. Maybe I can ask Kai to come back in. We wanted to touch a little bit about being a working parent with younger students. So Kai, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Could you talk how you've balanced some of your work efforts having some of the younger students in your life?
Right. So I will start out and say I have a more flexible work schedule, and I know not everyone will have that. And beyond that, I don't work full time. I am a college professor who teaches an online course and has to go in or had to go in once a week to teach chemistry lab. So, when Clark, my younger one, has been on his kindergarten Google Meets, I typically am grading papers or writing tests or working on other things for my work. So you have to be very intentional about when the work is going to get done. It is a struggle to maintain focus because understandably, kindergartners work in short bursts of time, and I have had to learn to be okay, saying, all right, you got to play by yourself sometimes. And there are resources that he can do by himself. Epic has been wonderful. He loves to listen to books. My kindergarten and second grade boys have become very good friends over the past 6 months, and they are forced to play together. We kind of live in an isolated area, and there aren't a lot of other kids around. If there are other kids around where you live, I think that would be a great advantage. I didn't plan to live through a pandemic when I bought my house, but you know, my kids have gotten very close in spending time together, and you know, doing listening to audiobooks. I make them go outside all the time, at least regularly on the day, daily kind of. And so it's just about kind of keeping notes for yourself. I know a lot of people who have mentioned you keep a schedule for their kids, and I think that's probably a very good idea when the kids can read. But for me, it's about keeping a schedule for myself about when I'm going to get things done and maintaining flexibility for myself.
Thank you, Kai. I know there were some questions in the chat talking about screen time. Do I have any panelists that's willing to talk a little bit about how they manage the technology in their house and during this pandemic to not have their kids on screens all the time, or what they do? You can just unmute yourself and go ahead.
I can say something about that, Tony, if
Go ahead, Sybil.
There's really a difference between passive screen time versus active screen time. And I would say the screen time that your child will be getting with distance learning is active. Passive screen time would just be kind of the mindless YouTube videos or just watching TV. But maybe we're different. I'm not sure, but we don't really have that screen burnout. You know, my kids, you know, they like the distance learning. And my 5th grader is thriving and she is getting independent. But we do have the cutoff of like, you know, hey, you can watch one TV show today. You know, that's it. But, you know, the active screen time that they're having with classmates, with their teacher, and then even like the interactive video games, like you can play some video games, you know, with friends online. You know, I would say that's different, and that's working for us. And you know, maybe some of the other teacher or principal panelists can attest to that, or if there's something I might be missing. But for us, that's what's working.
I think Lisa, go ahead, Lisa.
Sorry, I was just gonna, well, I'll echo what Sybil said. I think there is a big difference between active and passive screen time. But one thing that's helped with my kids being in kindergarten and 1st grade is that the iPad is a source of great curiosity, amusement for them. They really want to explore every single little button that they can. And so one thing that we've had to do is we'll move some of the assignments off of Seesaw and onto paper, and we've been that also helps, is that they can focus when it's time for school, and they know that they're going to get that time to really explore on it.
I think we lost Lisa's audio there for a minute. Is there anyone else that wants to comment on this screen time topic?
I would say the same thing as Lisa was saying. I think even for the 5th grade, taking things off of the computer screen and putting them on paper, getting them, you know, they had a whiteboard that they can use for math and things like that, but really encouraging my daughter to use the paper and to write things out and to do the art projects and to color and to do creative things, getting them using the other parts of their brain instead of just the computer piece of it. I will also say there's some great benefits to this because hands down, without her, I probably couldn't have even signed on to this meeting tonight. So there's so much to be said for what they are learning already. But definitely taking things to paper again and doing different things to get the homework done.
And I think I saw Audra wanted to say something as well.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, with Sybil, Elizabeth, and Lisa, all of those pieces, I really think that we as the teachers and administrators need to make sure we're encouraging you as families to help your child do what they can offline, especially the littles, because they are still working so hard to develop their small and fine motor, and not having a pencil in their hand really makes a difference. They are no longer developing some of those OT skills that we really need them to work towards. So get out the Play-Doh and get out the Legos and make sure that they are working on all of those little cutting and pasting and gluing activities. And I know it's hard to put that all together on your own, and it's not something that's going to be coming across the screen very much. But anytime you can get them really working on using their hands and getting them moving is something that we try to encourage as much as we can. And then I'm also noticing a big difference when both my middle schooler, when I try to get her outside, and then she comes back in and she's settled and she's a little bit more ready. And I'm seeing the same thing with those kindergartners. I'm saying, get outside if you can, trying to even make some suggestions that they take their book outside when it's really nice out, or maybe even take a pause in their learning for the day to take advantage of the weather if we have a day of good weather. And I'm going to let them catch up a little bit later, because it is that balance piece that we really need to find.
Yeah, and I just want to echo what you said. It's that balance. That's why we have breaks set in on the schedule for kids to have those breaks from the technology. And at school, we talk about personalized pathways that students can take. So them kind of owning, if I'm more of a paper pencil person, then I want to do my math on a paper pencil or a whiteboard, but having them have different pathways that they can learn or do their best with that as well.
And I was about to iterate the same thing as there's wellness breaks. It's a good time to make those wellness breaks to get away from the screens. Every day they're in elementary, they're talking about independent reading time. They don't have to do that necessarily on their screen. So there's a lot of options to get rid of the screens. And I think it is important to note the difference between that active and passive screen time. So the screen time that they're in school doesn't necessarily count against the screen time that you might have already established as a family for the other more passive things of, watching shows or anything like that. So I'm going to close now. I just want to thank all of our panelists, the principals, our teachers, and all the audience members. This is just not even the start. This is just a part of the continuing conversation we're having as we figure out how to learn during a pandemic. And I would encourage all of you, as you heard, communication is going to be key. Communicate with your teachers. If you're running into problems, ask. Don't sit there thinking you're the only one with that problem or that there is no solution. There's going to be solutions. We're all going to be working together. So I just leave you with that. As you're leaving, I'd also ask you to go back and how you might be feeling about distance learning now. Put in your one-word answers into those chats. It'd be interesting to see if hopefully some of your anxieties are a little less, if you feel a little bit more confident come Wednesday. That's hopefully the goal of what we are trying to present with you. And we'd like to continue to have these conversations with everyone. We're in this together, and I think together, if we communicate, reaching out to our friends and teachers and principals and everybody else, we're going to find a lot of success. Give yourself a lot of grace this first week and realize every week it's just going to get a little bit better. So thank everyone for being here tonight, and I will be logging off, and I hope you guys a great Wednesday.